The sound of smeared lipstick, untucked shirts, running mascara, tears on your pillow, secrets whispered in the still of the night, the high school bleachers and the dark at the YMCA canteen, the soundtrack for your incredibly wonderful, limp your ass, blue-balled walk back home after the dance. Oh! It hurts so good. In the late 50s and early 60s, doo-wop dripped from radios in the gas stations, factories, streets, and pool halls, the temples of life and mystery in my little hometown. And I would always be enraptured by its basic chord progression. Isn't there supposed to be a guitar out here? Anybody got one?
Yes.
I don't really need it, but it was just that Don't make you want to kiss somebody? And it became one soft and fisted summer, me and Terry became friends. It's all comes from the same place. But anyway, then into my 13-year-old ears came 60s pop. Roy Orbison. Besides Johnny Cash, he was the other man in black. He was the true master of the romantic apocalypse you dreaded and knew was coming after the first night you whispered, "I love you" to your new girlfriend. You were going down. Roy was the coolest uncool loser you'd ever seen. With his Coke bottle black glasses, his 3-octave range, he seemed to take joy sticking his knife deep into the hot belly of your teenage insecurities. Simply the titles, Crying, It's Over, Running Scared. That's right, the paranoia. Oh, the paranoia. He sang about the tragic unknowability of women. He was tortured by soft skin, Angora sweaters, beauty and death, just like you. But he also sang that he'd been risen to the heights of near unexpressible bliss by these same very things that tortured him. Oh, cruel irony. And for those few moments, he told you that the wreckage and the ruin and the heartbreak was all worth it. I got it, my young songwriter's wisdom said to me. Life is tragedy, broken by moments of unworldly bliss that make that tragedy bearable. I was half right. That wasn't life, that was pop music. But at 24, who knew the difference? So I was on my way. Then Spectre, the Wall of Sound. Phil's entire body of work could be described by the title of one of his lesser-known productions. He hit me, and it felt like a kiss. Phil's records felt like near chaos, violence covered in sugar and candy, sung by the girls who were sending Royo running straight for the antidepressants. If Roy was opera, Phil was symphonies, little 3-minute orgasms followed by oblivion. And Phil's greatest lesson was sound, sound, sound is its own language. I mean, the first thing you would think of Phil Spector is, that was all you needed. And then the British invasion. My first real guitar, I actually began to learn how to play. And this was different, shifted the lay of the land. 4 guys playing and singing, writing their own material. There was no longer going to be a music producer apart from the singer, a singer who didn't write, a writer who didn't sing. It changed the way things were done. The Beatles were cool, they were classical, formal, and created the idea of an independent unit where everything could come out of your garage. The Meet the Beatles album cover, those 4 headshots, I remember I seeing them at J.J. Newberry's. It was the first thing I saw. When you ran down to the 5 and 10 cent store, there were no record stores. There weren't enough records, I don't think. And there was like a little set, you know, by the toys where they sold a few albums. I remember running in and seeing that album cover with those 4 headshots. It was like, you know, the silent gods of Olympus. You know, your future just sort of staring you in the face. And I remember thinking, that's too cool. I'm never going to get there, man. Never. And then in some fanzine, I came across a picture of the Beatles in Hamburg. And they had on the leather jackets and the slick back pompadours, and they had acne faces. And I said, hey, wait a minute, those are the guys I grew up with. You know, they were the Liverpool wharf rats. So minus their Nehru jackets and the haircuts. So these guys, they're kids. They're a lot cooler than me, but they're still kids. There must be a way to get there from here. And then for me, it was the Animals. For some, they were just another one of the really good beat groups that came out of the 60s. But to me, the Animals were a revelation. They were the first records with full-blown class consciousness that I'd ever heard. We got to get out of this place. It had that great bass riff, you know, it had that and that was just the clock, man, the clock marking time, you know. In this dirty old part of the city where the sun refused to shine, people tell me there ain't no sense in trying. My little girl, you're so young and pretty. One thing I know is true. You'll be dead before your time is due. This I know. See my daddy in bed and dying. See his hair turning gray. He's been working and slaving his life away. Yes, I know. It's been work every day. Just work every day. It's been work, 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 work. We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do, we gotta get out of this place. Girl, there's a better life for me and you. Yes, I know it's true. That's every song I've ever written. Yeah. That's all of them. I'm not kidding either. That's Born to Run, Born in the USA. Everything I've done for the past 40 years, including all the new ones, you know. But that struck me so deep. It was the first time I felt I heard something come across the radio that mirrored my home life, my childhood. And the other thing that was great about the Animals was there were no good-looking members. There were none. They were considered to be one of the ugliest groups in all of rock and roll. And that was good. That was good for me because I considered myself hideous at the time. And so, okay, all right, and they weren't nice, they didn't curry favor, they were like aggression personified. It's my life. I'll do what I want, They were cruel. They were cruel, which was so freeing. It was so freeing. When you saw Eric Burdon looked like a shrunken, like your shrunken daddy with a wig on, He never had a kid's face. He always had a little man's face, and he couldn't dance. He was like this. And they put him in a suit, but it was like putting a gorilla in the suit, You could tell he fuck that shit, man. He didn't want it, And then he had that voice that was like, I don't know, howling wolf or something, coming out of some 17 or 18-year-old kid. I mean, I don't know how it happened. But they were I found their cruelty so freeing. What was that great verse in It's My Life? It's a hard world to get a break, and all the good things have been taken. They'll make certain, though dressed in these rags, I'll wear sable someday. Hear what I say. I'm going to ride the serpent. No time spent sweat and rent. And then that beautiful, It's My life. Show me I'm wrong. Hurt me sometime. Hurt me sometime. But someday I'll treat you real fine. I love that. Yes, 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 yes. And then they had the name. The name was very different from the Beatles or Herman's Hermits or Freddie and the Dreamers. The name was unforgiving and final and irrevocable. It was in your face. It was the most unapologetic group name until the Sex Pistols came along. Badlands, Prove It All Night. The darkness was filled with the Animals. I took youngsters. Watch this one. All right, I took. I'm gonna tell you how it's done right now. I took Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. It's the same fucking riff, man. Listen up, youngsters. This is how successful theft is accomplished. All right? And darkness was also informed by the punk explosion at the time. I went out and I got all the records, all the early punk records, and I brought Anarchy and UK and God Save the Queen, and the Sex Pistols were so frightening. They literally shook the earth. They were truly, which is different from shocking. A lot of groups managed shocking, but frightening was something else. There's very, very few rock groups that managed frightening. And that was a great quality. It was part of their great beauty. They were brave and they challenged you and they made you brave. And a lot of that energy seeped its way into the subtext of Darkness. Darkness was written in 1977, and all of that music was out there. And if you had ears, you could not ignore it. And I had peers that did, and they were mistaken. You could not ignore that challenge. And of course, for me, there's of course movies, films. That's another discussion, But soul music, incredibly important. The blue collar grit of soul music. It was that I was brought up on a back street. I learned how to love before I could eat. Now, even though I personally learned how to eat long before I knew how to love, I knew what he was talking about. It was the music of gritty determination, of the blues, of the church, of the earth, and of the sex-soaked heavens. It was music of sweaty perspiration and drenched demands for pleasure and respect. It was adult music. It was sung by soul men and women, not teen idols, you know. And then it was the silken sequined aspirational sounds of Motown. That was something smoother, but that was no less powerful than Stax, you know. There was the beautifully socially conscious soul of Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions. We're a winner. Keep on pushing. You know, just great records that just filled the airwaves at a time when they you couldn't have needed them more. You just couldn't have needed them more. You know, Woman's Got Soul. What a beautiful record to win. You know, It's All Right. It was the soundtrack of the civil rights movement. It was here amongst these great African American artists that I learned my craft. You know, you learned how to write, you learned how to arrange, you learned what mattered and what didn't, learned what a great production sounds like, you learned how to lead a band, learned how to front a band. These men and women, they were and they remain my masters. And by the time I reached my 20s, I'd spent 1,000 nights employing their lessons in local clubs and bars, honing my own skills. I was signed as an acoustic singer-songwriter, but I was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Signed by John Hammond at Columbia Records, along with Elliot Murphy, John Prine, Loudon Wainwright III. We were all new Dylans. The old Dylan was only 30. So I don't even know why they needed a fucking new Dylan. All right? But those were the times. 30 was, you know. But I had nights and nights of bar playing behind me to bring my songs home. Young musicians, learn how to bring it live and then bring it night after night after night after night. Your audience will remember you. Your ticket is your handshake. And the ability, these skills gave me a huge ace up my sleeve. And when we finally went on the road and we played that ace, we scorched the earth, because that's what I was taught to do by Sam Moore and by James Brown. There is no greater performance than James Brown burning ass on the Rolling Stones at the Tammy Show. Sorry, my friends. You know, and I fucking love the Stones, but James Brown, boys and men, you know, you were screwed. Yeah, I think I'll go on after James Brown. Oh yeah, can you put me in the schedule somewhere after James Brown? Fuck, no! Get out! Go home! Save it! Don't waste it, man. I had a great thing with James Brown. I went to see James Brown one night, and he kind of knew me. I was sitting in the audience, and suddenly I heard, "Ladies and gentlemen, Magic Johnson," and Magic Johnson was on stage. And "Ladies and gentlemen, Woody Harrelson," and he was on stage. And then I'm sitting in my seat watching, and I hear, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Born in the USA," you know. And I realized he didn't know my name, but he knew. So I ran my ass up there as fast as I could. I can't tell you, man. Standing on stage alongside of James Brown, you know, it was like, fuck, what am I doing here, you know? You know, it was just, you know, and we just went and went and went. But his influence, James Brown, underrated, still today, underrated, you know, he's Elvis. He's Elvis. You know, he's Dylan. And then Dylan, from whom I first heard a version of the place that I lived that felt unvarnished and real to me. If you were young in the 60s and 50s, everything felt false everywhere you turned. But you didn't know how to say it. There was no language for it at the time. It just felt fucked up, you know. But you didn't have the words. Bob came along and gave us those words, you know. He gave us those songs, you know. And the first thing he asked you was, how does it feel, man? How does it feel? You know, to be on your own. And if you were a kid in 1965, you were on your own, because your parents, God bless them, they could not understand the incredible changes that were taking place. You were on your own, you know, without a home. He gave us the words to understand our hearts, you know. He didn't treat you like a child. He treated you like an adult. He stood back and he took in the stakes that we were playing for. He laid them out in front of you. I never forgot it. And Bob is the father of my musical country now and forever. And I thank him, you know. But the great trick I learned from Bob, if it could be done, is he still does one thing that nobody can do. He sings verse after verse after verse after verse. It doesn't get boring. That's almost impossible. But Dylan wrote. He didn't write about something. He wrote about everything that mattered at once in every song. It seemed like. And I said, "Yeah, I want to," you know. And he pulled it off. I said, "Yeah, I like that. I want to try that." So now I'm in my late 20s, and I'm concerned, of course, getting older, you know. I want to write music that I can imagine myself singing on stage at the advanced old age, perhaps of 40, you know. I wanted to grow up, you know. I wanted to twist the form I loved into something that could address my adult concerns. And so I found my way to country music.